Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another live stream. And I believe this is the third or fourth time the General is joining us. And for those of you who don't know, a man who doesn't really require introduction, but retired General Lennit Max, former Provincial Commissioner of Police for the Western Cape. And I believe he retired in 2004 from the SAPS General,
2003.
2003.
Yes,
and we've got quite an interesting discussion on this evening, particularly with regards to what's been happening in KZN and Gauteng across 5 metros. And that's in relation to the response options available to government, the various units involved, as well as the role of civilians and how they can essentially, through securing their own neighborhoods, take the pressure off the authorities. So, General, just jumping right in, what can you tell us pertaining to how these types of situations are generally responded to, what the plan is, and you know how long it takes to get these actions off the ground and let them materialize?
Yeah, Gideon, first of all, let me say that, let me condemn what happened, in KwaZulu-Natal and as well as in Johannesburg and Gauteng. It all started with the Jacob Zuma court order where he was instructed to hand himself over for 15 months jail sentence. And if he don't do that on the 4th of July, then the police must arrest him before or on the 7th of July. Now, on the 4th of July, as we all witnessed on TV, that instead of going to hand him over to the police to be dealt with accordingly, he had visitors, ANC structures which came and visited him, breaking the laws as with regards to the lockdown, COVID-19 regulations, and some actually in uniform, I don't know what formation they were, fired shots with automatic rifles as well. So it was a total disregard for law and order on that particular day. And on the same day, there were also threats made by certain individuals that if you touch Zuma, then, the country will burn and all that things. Now, according to information and according to newspaper reports, the police already placed amongst those who attended the Zuma gathering, the illegal one, are police officers to monitor the situation and also to gain some information, as well as police camera operatives who actually pretended to be media people and to take necessary video material for any further action if possible. And at that stage, it was already clear that Jacob Zuma is defiant when he didn't go and hand himself over. So already the security forces should have actually saw this, the red flags that something is going to be done and something is going to happen. Now, everything builds it up after the 4th, because that is now in the phase that the minister and the national commissioner was actually now instructed to act before or on the 7th. And it was clear that Jacob Zuma did not intend to comply. So the mere fact that they say that he went and complied with a court order to hand him over to report to the correctional center, that is not true. He didn't comply. His compliance date was on the 4th. He was actually arrested by his own bodyguards, who are police officers and stand under the instruction of the national commissioner. So and took to the correctional authority or center. Now, at that time, there was already threats, social media clips, everything, indicated that something is going to happen. Yeah. Now, at that particular stage, you will see in video material that evening when Jacob Zuma was about to be arrested, there was a huge, show of force with vehicles as well as police officers, because they expected some resistance and when they are going to arrest Zuma. But that didn't happen. At that stage, there was sufficient information available, according to me, for the police minister to request from the president and his counterpart in the defense minister, so to put the defense force on standby, for any things what might happen. But that didn't happen. And you must understand the police service got only 187,000 members, of which about 40,000 is administrative. And a lot of them in uniform is actually administrative staff, which were actually transferred from the civilian leg to the operational leg without the necessary training. So you can't really deploy those people in the field of operations, hard operations, because they are not trained for it, although they are carrying and wearing military ranks. So they are left with about 147. And then the majority of those people are actually deployed at station level on the 1,150 police stations. Then public order police, they are, concentrated to very small areas in each province. Now, when you face some widespread, unrest and instability, you don't have the force, the people's power actually to address those simultaneously effectively. And for that reason, you could see that police stations at station level they were also, called out to situations where these unrest and theft and damage of property took place. And they were actually in the minority, and then they face thousands of people damaging property. And it is also clear on the video material that some of them, when they finish their bullets, the rubber bullets, then they just stood by and let things go on. And because they can't stop 3 police officers can't stop 300 people. So they were totally outnumbered at all. So at that stage, we didn't have any force multipliers like the defense force deployment. Now, in my view and in my experience, the defense force should have been deployed the Friday already, to assist the police, because at that stage, from the 7th to the 9th on the Friday, it was clear that in the threats, taking in consideration the threats, it was clear that the damage is going to be done to property. And it didn't happen. The defense force was deployed a little bit late, too late, because then this damage and unrest was already in full swing. And the public order police they were definitely, outnumbered at the various places where they were deployed. And it also appears that the organization of that was not properly done, the coordination and so on. Now, the defense force, once they are being deployed in terms of Section 201 of the Constitution, and once so deployed, they will possess all the powers similar to that of a police officer. And that means they've got arresting powers, searching powers, put up roadblocks, and they can seize property. But if they effect an arrest or seize property, they must hand it over as quick as possible to the police so that they can be dealt with in terms of the law. Now, in terms of Section 20 of the Defense Act, is stated that once they are so deployed and possess those powers of as a police officer, their responsibility is to prevent crime prevention, to maintain law and order, and also to protect the country from any attacks from within. So, but they cannot investigate any crimes. That is a police function. And once they are there, they also can act in terms of the Criminal Procedure Act 40 from section 40, 49, and etc. As well as the Road Traffic Act, the National Road Traffic Act, as well as powers in terms of section 13 of the South African Police Act. Now you can understand now that they are policemen on their own, and they doesn't operate and function under the control of the police. There is a myth and a misconception about the fact when the defense force is deployed that the police should be in charge. No, not at all. But in terms of the call-up order, it appears in that call-up order that they are there in support of the police. That is correct. But they don't stand under the command of the South African Police Service. They work together with the police to allow the police to be effective.
So there's another question I have for you, General. So a couple of years ago, just after the Andries Tatane incident, I believe there was significant pressure put on the police by a non-profit organization, NGO, Gun Free South Africa, and that this pressure succeeded in station-level access to shotguns and rubber ammunition was recalled or revoked, which resulted in station police officers who are the first to possibly respond to the initial flare-ups of public violence, being unable to respond with anything else except 9mm pistols and obviously the R5 rifles with sharp point ammo, which means that there's not all that much they can do unless they are trying to sort of exert lethal force, which is something that they're trying to avoid. Which, if that is in fact, if I'm getting the story correct, and you must please now correct me if I'm wrong, that was a massive blow to the ability for the police to rapidly react to public violence, because that infers that not much can be done until the public order police units arrive on scene with their equipment.
Yes, that's correct. You know, let me take it from the Marikana incident. The Marikana Judicial Commission, recommended, or you can say actually instructed, that no sharp point and deadly ammunition must be used or even be present in automatic rifles during the deployment of police in dealing with riots, unrest. That is the one thing. And it was requested in that report that a panel of experts should be put together and make recommendations to the police in terms of dealing with public unrest. Now, the panel of experts report became available about 2 months ago, where it was launched by the Minister of Police, Mr. Becky Kele. And in that report, because I use it as part of my studies, it is very clear that the police should not use R5s or automatic rifles, fully automatic rifles, but rather non-lethal bullets, with reference to the rubber bullets. Now, it's not only the police, but let me finish to say that whilst I was watching this TV program with regards to this unrest, the reporter of ENCA in Johannesburg mentioned that the police told them they don't have any ammunition, their rubber bullets are finished, all they got is this empty shotgun and their 9mm. And as a result, people were actually committed crime in their presence because there's no way that they could actually prevent them because they didn't have the right tools. Now, in terms of the deployment of the defense force, once the defense force has been deployed, the defense force for that particular policing function should also be issued with the relevant instruments to execute a policing function, not a war function, but a policing function, because in terms of the act, it states very clearly they are occupying now and possessing the powers of a police officer, and they are equal. The one is not inferior to the other one, and doesn't stand on the orders of the other one. So they must also, but they are issued with R4s or R5 rifles, and that is live ammunition, which is not conducive. That is contrary to the recommendations of the Farlam Marikana Commission, as well as the report of the panel of experts. So that is a problem. So I hope that out of this whole exercise, that the police, and I will deal with it at a later stage, will review their deployment, because there's also allegations that these guys were deployed, they didn't get food and they didn't get any backup ammunition to fill up their stock. You understand? And they are left there, alone to fight for themselves. So once they put themselves in a situation where they have to defend themselves because their lives are at risk, then obviously they're going to use their 9mm to defend themselves. But yeah, that is ultimately a problem at this particular stage. But let me say that once you look at the deployment of when the National Defence Force actually joined the SEPs at grassroots level, there were no coordination. There's no roadblocks. They could have done that if there was proper cooperation, prevent people to take away the property from the shops, nothing. They were just standing there in between. But now you must also understand there's certain laws and regulations of which the police officers have to comply with. And that is that their instruction 1 of 2016 make it very clear, paragraph 8.5 of that national instruction, that no life will be taken and shall be taken when property is damaged, to defend property, irrespective of the value of the property. But contrary to that, Section 205(3) of the Constitution states very clearly the duties of the police is to protect life of the citizens and their property. So there is a bit of conflict. The Constitution was not amended to erase that part where property is concerned. Now, it is also equally important that you must understand that they commit crime in the presence of the police. Now, there's a case, they call it the Minister of Police versus Evils, where it was stated very clearly that the law put a positive obligation on government to protect property and to protect life. And if a crime is committed in their presence and the individual maybe was injured, assaulted, or experienced damage to the property or lost, then obviously that individual got a civil action against the government for not actually acting when the law actually obliges them to do so. So if you look at this particular situation, Minister Dlotlo, the Minister of State Security, she made it plain yesterday at the press conference that they had information and they passed it on to the Minister of Police. The Minister of Police didn't deny this. He didn't say they didn't receive it or they did receive it. He didn't deny it. Now, if she said that she passes on their department passes it on to the client. Now, the client is obviously the police. And there was a delay, maybe an unnecessary delay, an unjustified delay. And it causes the damage. Subsequent to that delay, this damage was caused by the perpetrators. Now, somebody must be held accountable. Some heads needs to be rolled. It needs to roll because the government, in terms of the constitution, is responsible to protect the citizens' lives and their property in terms of the act. And if there was an unjustified delay, then obviously I am the view, and that is also, I appreciate the fact that Action SA is going forward now with a class action, uh, for the damage of which happened and took place at the various places, and they invited victims of that particular unrest to join them in the class action, and they are prepared to deal with the legal costs. But that was not done before. There's no record that it was done before. But the thing is not a case of it should have been done before to allow you to institute it. This is a fact of, let us test whether government comply with its constitutional obligations, and if not, if government's delay was unjustified to act properly, not only act but properly. Once they experience these red flags and threats, why didn't they at that particular time deployed sufficient defense force people to prevent the burning of about 70 trucks, how many shops destroyed, factories destroyed, people's lives, about
tens of
72
billions of
people killed.
rands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's about 72 people got killed in the process. So obviously, that will be, I'm looking forward that for them to actually go forward, not because I've got anything against the state or anything against an individual. What is important here is you can't only, I disagree with people who says no, the place where to keep government responsible and accountable is parliament. That is a myth. Some ministers don't even pitch in parliament. They don't even answer. They don't even answer questions in parliament. So that is one place where you can only put words. They don't move them. But once you take them to court, the court make a judgment. And if it is in your favor, then obviously they got remedies to appeal it or not. But I think this thing is going to turn into a constitutional court decision to determine if government lacked in acting and was neglected, negligent, and not act timeously on the information at their disposal.
Yep.
And it causes damage to innocent citizens of this country, which they are responsible to protect. Obviously, there will be a judgment, and that judgment can be used for future cases, and that will keep government on its toes. There's some ministers got an attitude of, they are God of Africa. You must jump when you see them or whatever. It's just the other way around. We are not in service of the ministers. The ministers are in service of the public. Exactly. And people must understand that. And ministers must understand that they are not God. When they come, they are our servants because we vote them in and they get paid by taxpayers' money. You understand? So the thing is, that case, for instance, for example, this case of the EFF versus the National Assembly, there was never in the past a case like that. Never. As legal history, this precedent created because there's always a first time where you challenge the authority of government and you try to keep them accountable. Parliament per se is not the place where it is effectively done. There's a lot of words to say, there's a lot of speeches to be made, but there's no difference outside. And the only way that you will see a difference outside is when you take them to court, so that the court compel them to act in accordance with the Constitution. You understand? This Constitution is just a book with about 189 pages. And there's nothing. I can put it in the water, I can put it in the fire. It's just a piece of paper. But this content of this paper, of this book, was tested with the Jacob Zuma court order.
Yes,
To,
big time.
to prove to us whether this is a living document and whether this document is protecting our rights. And the mere fact that Jacob Zuma was actually ultimately arrested and placed in prison assured us that this document, you know, got value, and it direct us. Because if government didn't act in accordance with the court order, then we could have teared up this document because it was of no value then.
And that is an interesting point when we talk about, the Constitution doesn't give us rights, it protects rights, because there are many people who don't quite understand that. But this inaction by government, this failure to act on the intelligence, this failure to interpret the intelligence, whether that's through incompetence or malice, we'll probably still find out. But whatever the reasons, there were ordinary citizens that were left with a huge vacuum of safety and security, as the authorities just did not have the resources to respond to the mass outbreak. And these citizens took up their own guns. They went via their existing CPF neighborhood watch structures. They communicated, they shared resources, they shared information with the authorities, they cooperated with the authorities. But in most cases, that involved the police saying, "You are on your own. We can't help you. Do what you need and to stay safe, and we'll get back to you in about 72 hours, which in many cases happened. And in most cases, I'm aware of at least 3 communities where the guys gave their personal ammunition to the police because the police had run out of 9mm. And the only thing that kept them going so that they could protect their neighborhoods is that they could legally reload their own ammunition with reloading presses in their homes. It was harrowing stories came out of this. And a couple of years ago, I said that a well-trained, disciplined, and well-armed civilian population is a national security asset, not a liability. I believe Ronald Noble, who was one of the previous Secretary Generals of Interpol, said something similar, but I'm not going to try to paraphrase him. And this is an asset that government, if it were a responsible government, could tap into and use as a sort of informal reservist population group. You and I both know, General, what happened to the real reservists, and that it declined by about 85% due to mismanagement. Many people are seeing the truth to this. Bheki Cele doesn't seem to like the fact that ordinary citizens managed to secure their own homes and neighborhoods. In your opinion, how do normal people, ordinary citizens, fit into this vacuum of safety and security, and how can they make a difference?
Yes, let me first say, government's priorities are wrong. We had before this, and currently, 58 people killed on a daily basis. And that is increasing. It was 57 and it increased to 58. It can even be more, because this crime stats is not 100%. It's more or less 100%, but not 100%. While crime was increasing and people died at 58 on a day, not even in a war situation at the moment, and you experience your cash and transit robberies, business robberies, and so forth, the government cut the budget of the South African Police Service. I cannot believe it.
And it was a massive cut.
Yeah, and then they expect the National Commissioner of Police, General Sitole, Kesla Sitole, to serve with 140,000 people, actually operational, 58 million. It is impossible. It's an impossible task to do it properly. Similar to the warm bodies, the equipment, as you pointed out, is also a problem. They don't have it, and I alluded to it earlier on. they don't have the necessary equipment and ammunition to do their job and to protect lives of the people. Now, in other words, if government is not properly resourced to protect the lives of the people, then the people should do what they are supposed to do. They don't have a choice. They are forced into the situations where we had now experienced, as they call it, vigilante groups, who actually are desperately trying to protect their livelihood as well as their families' lives and their suburbs not to be burned down to ashes. Now, you can't blame them. Now, we've got neighborhood watches. In the Western Cape, um, it was well organized and is still in place where neighborhood watches were coordinated with the police, proper coordination, and we didn't experience any of these type of unrest which we saw in KwaZulu-Natal as well as in Pretoria. But coming to the communities, the police with a community mandate. And if the police are not in a position to protect themselves, obviously it is their right to protect themselves, to form groups and to protect themselves. And for that particular reason, as much as you find your farm watches, now farm watches and security guards companies are well organized structures as well as your neighborhood watches. But apart from that, this thing causes communities to on an ad hoc basis, impulsively form groups to protect each other and to protect their property. Now, there might be accusations and instances where they might maybe breach the law for the one or other reason, but that needs to be investigated and proved in court if it is the case. But you cannot stop communities to protect themselves if the government is not in a position to do so. And that is a constitutional responsibility of government to protect, and actually a first responsibility, because there cannot be a government if the people are all dead. The government govern the people and the people choose the government of the day. So then we come to this firearm thing, which is a picky pay at the moment.
Yeah.
No, you can imagine, Gideon, if all our firearms and were taken by government, which Minister Bheki Cele intend to do, it was a bloodbath in certain areas.
Without
The
a
people
shadow of a
were
doubt.
left on their own as sitting ducks without any proper defense weapon to save their own lives and their properties. I mean, we don't deserve this type of treatment.
No.
And I hope that the minister reconsider that particular amendment bill in the light of what happened now, and we need our firearms to protect ourselves. Without our firearms, you can imagine, although there's an accusation that people are being targeted, because of firearms and so forth, and at farms they look for the firearms. Now you can imagine if a farmer doesn't have a firearm, they are isolated. They are not where they can hire. For instance, here I've got, for instance, arm response. Within 3 minutes they will attend to my alarm. But on the farms, it's differently. Farms are kilometers away from each other, and the farm watchers have to drive when they get an alarm. You understand? It takes time. And
Exactly.
they need to protect themselves because they are there to provide for us, food for South Africa. And if they are being murdered, then it don't affect only the farmer. It affects the farmer's workforce as well. And those people will then migrate from the rural areas to the cities where they are not trained for the job market in the city. And what happens? Your crime is going to escalate.
Yeah.
So if we protect your farmers, you protect jobs as well, because your farming community is one of the biggest employers of people in South Africa.
And it's one of the few employers during this entire economic contraction due to lockdown that actually expanded employment and started hiring more people than there were layoffs. The other interesting point about this is there were a lot of horror stories that were circulated about, these self-defense civilian units, these neighborhood watches, these armed groups. It would be a complete bloodbath. Now, there have been many, many, many people actively protecting malls, hospitals, their neighborhoods, lots of shooting around Durban and Gauteng and Soweto. And everyone was involved. There was black, white, colored, Indian. Taxi bosses were there helping to try and restore order. Stolen goods were recovered by civilians. Again, lots of shooting. No dead bodies in the street, no massacres, none of this hyperbolic nonsense that we were told was going to be a result, because for the most part, bar one or two regrettable incidents, the civilians actually conducted themselves with discipline and decorum. And I think they understood what they were doing, and nobody wanted to cause a bloodbath, which means that this mythology that we're all irresponsible, trigger-happy hooligans that just want to kill people, that myth is busted. I mean, that's a nonsense story. Your thoughts on that, General, before we come to there was a very important point that you brought up with me that you'd like to discuss. But before we get to that, just your opinion.
No, it is. If you take the taxi environment, the taxi fraternity is known for taxi killings, because of the competition for routes. They astound me in the way that they acted now. They realize that
Same. I was blown away.
Yeah. So they actually came forward and say, not in our name. We are going to protect these malls because it is our income. These guys are destroying our livelihood and those of others. Because if there's no mall, people are not going to go to the mall, and that affect their business. So the thing is, they even I saw on television, they branded firearms, and the people were more disciplined when they act than when the police ordered them to do something. So they came to the fore and showed that they are not those hooligans which we portray them in certain instances, and mass murderers of competition, but also people with dignity, people with interest in the economy of the country, and want a peaceful solution and a peaceful environment for them actually to do business. So yes, the communities play a huge role. And the thing is, and in my view, and it is what I always say, and that is, the police can only stabilize a situation. The normalization of a situation is within that community. And we already saw this morning how the community of Johannesburg jumped in, and they didn't wait for government to clean up. They want to normalize the situation themselves. And that actually confirms my viewpoint that the normalization lies in the community and not necessarily with the police or any other law enforcement structure. They only stabilize it. Normalization is with the community. And I would like to commend those communities who took the initiative, and I hope, let me quickly go back. Minister Lotto says that they diverted a huge disaster to South Africa. Now, I read in the papers there were people who intended to damage the infrastructure of the country. And now, obviously, the minister, Zizi Godwa, the Deputy Minister of Intelligence, he was very serious when he says on television yesterday or today that they know of the people who try to do this, because that is Mkonto Wesizwe strategies which they executed. Now, if they know who they are, so obviously, and I believe there's one been arrested and they are on the tracks of the others. I would like to see who are they, and that they are going to be dealt with according to the law. And the other thing is there's about I said no 2,000 or something of the people arrested for this looting. Now my experience is now in South Africa that they burn universities, they burn property, then the police arrest these people, and after a couple of months the cases have been withdrawn.
Yeah.
So there's no deterrent. There's no,
There's no prosecution or
accountability. Yeah.
consequences. Exactly.
You understand? There's no consequences for these things. So I want to see what happened to these guys, these people who were arrested and charged, whether those cases will go end out or are they also going to be withdrawn. Then we will, that is a motivation for people to to get involved in crimes like this.
No, that's exactly it. And I suppose a very important question is General, if you were in charge of the security structures, what would you change or what would you do in order to prevent a similar sort of situation happening in the future? And the reason I ask is, if we look at the consequences of this particular mass destructive social uprising, it is going to cause severe economic consequences. There will be social consequences. There will be a lack of resources pertaining to food, clean water, electricity, all these things. There is the potential for this to happen again. I mean, I think we would be foolish to discount that. What do you think needs to be done in order to mitigate and prevent?
Yeah, you see, the thing is that this deputy minister, Zizi Godwa, he said that there are guys in the security agency who actually behind this. The people who are supposed to gain the information to protect the country is actually use information and planning to destroy the country. So that is now the cadre deployment which is happening, in the ANC deployment policy. And those cadres is not focusing on the interest of the country. They are aligning themselves with a particular faction, and they are actually promoting the interest of that particular faction. And that is why we are sitting with this problem at this point in time. People deployed in those instances on those departments should be apolitical, not express loyalty to a particular political party, but loyalty to the constitution and loyalty to the country and its people. That is the one thing. It means that you have to review that whole structure and employ people, which is officials, not politicians. And
there's a big difference.
Yeah. So they are officials, and we have heard in the it was before the Zondo Commission about the malfeasance which happened in the State Security Agency. Which is I don't have hair, but my hair was raising. To think that people who got access to your personal details and who've got the right to, interfere with your constitutional right of privacy and so forth, can act in that particular manner. That is the one thing. The other thing is, if I saw in the papers this morning in the news on News 24 that the National Defence Force called up their reservists. Now, I would like to propose to government to use those reservists as a national force, a national, a national force. Like America, they've got this national force, which they deploy all over America if there's a problem.
Yeah, the National Guard, essentially.
A guard, there's a guard, the National Guard, actually. So the National Guard, and they train them. First priority is to defend the country, but let them focus then on inland deployment. like in terms of Section 20, where they will possess the powers of police officers and do that function. So, and then you conduct exercises, regular exercises with them, and once anything of this nature is been sensed, what is going to happen, or then obviously call up your reservists. You don't have to take your frontline soldiers for this particular function, and that National Guard, which is then situated in the National Defence Force, they will complement public order police, and that will allow your station police officers to continue with their day-to-day policing for the other crimes which they have to attend to. So you don't take your station resources away and to attend to something the people is not regularly trained in, don't have the necessary equipment to conduct the service, render that particular service, and they endanger themselves because they are not equipped. So that is one of the things. The other thing is to strengthen your reserve service. It is so depleted, the reserve system, to increase your reserve system, and train them also in riot control. You train them. The priorities must just be aligned in the South African Police Service and the security service of this country. You train your reservists. There's a National Guard which is situated with the Defence Force. They are trained and exercises, regular exercises, and equipped with the necessary tools for that particular purpose, as well as your reserve services if they are deployed for crime prevention in general. But once there is unrest, you call up your reservists because they are trained in crowd control as well, and they are being deployed under the command of public order as a force multiplier. So the options are there. There's only think out of the box. The options are there. So, the tunnel vision approach, we have to get rid of it. And
there are so many workable solutions that will not destroy the budget. Exactly.
Precisely. Then I mentioned that. Then you've got also your farm watches, and you've got your security companies, your private security companies. Now, private security is already, most of them are armed security, armed. There should be a better coordination between police and private security.
Yes, absolutely.
And there should be in each province a provincial body of private security who would represent them on a national level. So besides CIRA, who actually do the administration, I belong also with my company to CIRA, but that is also the administration, the code of conduct, and so forth. But the operational things, where you serve as a force multiplier to the South African Police Service, who's the prime crime prevention unit in our country, and who've got the ultimate responsibility to protect our citizens, that you, in cooperation with them, are being deployed, and there's a proper coordination, and you block all loopholes possible, to do that, as well as your farm watches. In terms of Section 47, I think, if I'm not mistaken, of the Criminal Procedure Act, a police officer can instruct any person from the age of 60 to the age of 60 to assist him or her.
Yes.
To do the job. And if they fail, they are guilty of an offense and punishable. Now, once you've got these structures properly vetted, who works with the police, because you've got also those rogue security companies who got ulterior motives, and is vetted properly, and you can instruct, you can issue an instruction to say, we place the following companies on duty. Then they can you understand, besides the civilian power of arrest, you give them the extra protection, and coordination in assisting the police, to address this particular issues.
It's a form of almost deputization. So
Precisely.
you're taking people who are already registered as security officers. They have the equipment, they have the tools, they have the training, and you are using them as an auxiliary, which is absolutely brilliant idea. And thank you so much to everyone for their super chats tonight. The General is a wonderful guest, and we have him here regularly. While we've got the viewership, if you want to do something to stop the government from disarming good, ordinary, law-abiding citizens of their guns, please go to the Dear South Africa website. It's a public participation website. There is a section there that allows you to comment on the proposed Firearms Control Act Amendment Bill. Please click on that. Go give your comments. You can even click through it without having to write massive sentences. It'll take you 5 minutes. Please go there and say you reject the entire bill or you oppose the bill in its entirety. That will make a huge difference. Sorry, with that commercial break out the way, Dear South Africa, by the way, Google it. That's exactly it, General. These solutions are, we have possibly per capita the largest private security industry in the world. It's absolutely stupid to not use it for this purpose.
Yeah, yes, I totally agree with you. And let me talk about the ratio of police versus community. The ratio which the police apply at the moment is, in my view, totally wrong. For instance, they will take, say for argument's sake, the Western Cape got a population of 6.2 million. Make it 6.5 million. Then the police will count those who are stationed in the police in the Western Cape, plus the people who's working at the forensics units here next to me in Plattekloof.
Yep.
The forensic units, yes, and those fingerprint units who's not in the line function, they are administrative people, and then also those people who's been deployed from other provinces for a particular period of 3 months or so in the Western Cape. Then they take all those numbers and then they divide it with 6.5, and they say, no, it's about 380 people per officer. No, that is not true. Let me tell you that.
Yeah.
The ratio of the police should be done in the following way. And that is, you take a police station precinct. Then you count the population in that precinct. And then you take into account the difficulty of the policing environment there, like your shacks and all that stuff. And in accordance with that information, you determine the strength of that police station and resource the police station in terms of their own population. Because what happens now is, with that old ratio system, it shows 3.8, but in Kailicha or in Makassar, it is one policeman for 1,500 people. You understand? Because the ratio is not being determined on the police precinct, but on the whole province of the population. So if you do that, Gideon, and you subtract your admin people, those in the offices from your determination of the ratio, and you take your GDS, your community service center, your patrols and your detectives, and you count that in, only them, because those are the people who's out there in the community and who are actually facing the gangsters and must attend to the complaints. Now, we all complain that the police is always late, and it's after the fact they appear on the scenes, and they are not in time, and that is one of the reasons why the survey on victims of crime survey in 2018 indicated that the police trust in the police is about 54%.
Yeah.
And one of the things, they are readily available, they are corrupt, and they are lazy. Now, if you were actually, on the patrol van and you see for yourself and experience yourself how these people really change from the one with that van, they are driving the whole night from the one complaint to the next complaint. When the shift takes over, there's a clipboard full of complaints, which they have to carry over because they don't have the resources, the home bodies. Now, the police, in my view, in South Africa, to have a meaningful impact in our communities and on crime prevention, not crime detection, but crime prevention. The success of the police, let me explain this. The success of police is not necessarily how much people you have arrested for crimes already committed and for which you got already victims of crime.
Exactly.
The ultimate measurement of the success of the police is the absence of crime. The absence of crime is determined by precisely.
I wish more people understood that. It's not a metric. You can't have a performance metric of X amount of arrests or silly things like that. It is purely the absence of crime.
Precisely. So at this point, as we speak, private security is 534,000 strong, employed. The police are 187 and 140 is operational. We need at least 300,000 police officers in South Africa as a start. And you cannot take away from the budget of your frontline institution to protect lives for the SAA. You cannot do that. In other words, you don't regard the importance of your citizens' life as a priority, but as a secondary to other institutions, which is taking our taxpayers' money years in and year out.
I was about to say it's a secondary concern to a business class ticket to London, or even between Cape Town and Joburg. That's really it.
And Gideon, I'm saying this not because I've got some, as they say in Afrikaans, a belletjie te sleep met iemand. No, I don't say it. I don't do this. I'm talking to you as a concerned citizen and as a former operational general in the South African Police Service who loves the South African Police Service. And I want the National Commissioner to be successful because ultimately he is charged with a very important responsibility, and that is to protect lives. The thing is, if you take what happened to the police in the past, with all this employment as national commissioners who doesn't have a clue of what is policing. It was Jackie Zalebi, Becky Kelly, and Ria Peega. Now, and the police is the front line. The front line. It means the police is the primary entry point of the criminal justice system. The director of national public prosecutions or the Department of Public Prosecutions is secondary. After a crime is committed and it goes to them. Now, all these years since I was in the police, they appointed the national director of public prosecutions with a person with the relevant qualifications and experience. In certain instances, there were a couple of instances where they just put people there because they were, some willing, what you call it, for
useful deployments, shall we put it?
Useful deployments, right? But if you take the latest appointment, Shamila Patoy, and the powers given to her, you know, to appoint people to really, build the integrity of that institution and the capacity of that institution to ensure successful prosecutions. Now, they won't actually do this particular experiment with they won't put there a person with matric. They won't put there a person who's got a master's degree in social work. No, they won't put there a person, as I read in the papers, with a preschool education diploma. They won't put it there. No, they won't. But that is the secondary function. But the primary function, like the police, they experiment with these people.
Exactly.
Now,
Exactly.
is there really a regard to the lives of our citizens? Are they really serious when they do this? Policing is
That's the
not
question.
a policing is not a scope, skit, and donor function. No, policing is a science. It's a science. It's a profession. It's not like a tracker driver. No, it's not preschool. But you will see they appoint teachers in the police. But you can't take a policeman and make him a teacher. But
No.
everything is being tried and tested in the police. That's why we are sitting and finding ourselves where we are at this particular time. And you know what? It's difficult. You see how Shamila Batoy struggled to get that institution to a level where it regained trust from the communities. Now, similarly with the National Commissioner, he's the first after three previous appointments, who's a fully fledged police officer. And it's difficult to turn this Titanic around in the right direction. So why I'm saying this and why I'm participating when you people request me to do, I would like to make a contribution to explain to the people outside that we can do things much better. We don't have to be satisfied with what we have at this particular point in time. There are people with skills. People must just be identified and employed and allowed, to use their discretion and appoint not cadres, but officials, not politicians, but officials, and people with the necessary qualifications and experience. We hear this every time. Now we will renew the government and all this stuff, but nothing happens. Nothing happens.
Exactly. It's the same
And
empty promises every cycle.
Yeah, I mean, my time is gone in the police. I can play a different role at a different level, for instance. But obviously, I will make a contribution. I gave draft operational reports to the Western Cape Premier to say, I've got a plan, use it. And they use it. It has been implemented without any expectation in return, because I care for our people and I want South Africans to be safe. And whilst I can make a contribution, I will be first in line, because policing it was my calling. It was not just a job for a salary, but it was the love which I had to serve our people, and I was prepared to die for the cause, to ensure that other people's lives are safe.
Well, General, I hope that when your PhD is done, that serious things follow in its wake. And I think it will. I definitely think it will. And we would love to have you back on. Brian apologizes for not being here tonight. He actually has laryngitis and he can't speak. So that's his excuse. But in about 2 weeks from now, let me actually, while I've got you on the air with everybody watching, no pressure, about the 25th or so, round about then, of July, if you're available. We'd love to have you back, and the audience can come with some questions again, and we'll definitely have something interesting to talk about if you're keen.
Yeah, it depends on the topic. I don't want to talk about the topic which I'm not familiar with and don't have experience. But in the
It'll be
line of
something with
security,
policing and security,
yeah.
definitely.
No, if it is in line, okay, law as well. Limited knowledge I got of law. But yes, I would love to make a contribution wherever I can. And my wife said she normally says to me, when the people call me and ask and share their problems and they want solutions and advice, then I do it. And she said, these people is abusing you, man. It's abusing you. You don't. If I've got a problem, you don't have time to listen to me. But if they've got a problem, the thing is that instinct, that I have to help somebody. There's somebody in need. I have to assist this person with his problem. And once, if I can't resolve it, and I refer it to somebody else, and that is been addressed, then I feel I have achieved something.
Exactly.
I help somebody. When I was the MEC for community safety in the Western Cape, and a white person, a white guy, but middle age, I guess about 60 or 40 something, 60. He called me and he said to me, Minister, I've got a problem for 7 years. For 7 years. And the police can't solve it. I said, okay, sir, let me hear what is your problem. And he shared his problem. I said to him, but this is not a problem, man. This thing can be solved. He said, I thought as much. I thought as much. I said, okay, leave it with me. And and if the police didn't call you, attended to you within 2 days, the day before tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and then you called me. They said, okay. Took his number, everything, and I called one General Strader, who's also on retirement. I said to him, Raymond, here's a problem. This gentleman struggled 7 years, and I shared the problem. He said to me, but commissaris, this must is what so long. Ek sê, man, I told this guy, this is something which we can solve. He said, okay, leave it with me. I said to him, Raymond, but please revert to me after you address this issue. He said, that's fine. Raymond didn't call me back, and the next day, my PA said to me, Minister, Mr. So-and-so, the same guy is on the line. I checked. Oh, man. Hey, the police dropped me, man. They dropped me. And I said, okay, put him through. And he said to me, Minister Max, let me tell you, I had a bet on with a friend of mine. When I told him that this is my problem for 7 years, he begged me. He said, give that problem to Lennit Max. And if he can't resolve it, I buy you a whiskey. And if he resolve it, you owe me a whiskey. He said, I've lost my whiskey. I owe the guy whiskey. He said, my problem is solved. And he said to me, my friend had so much trust and confidence in you. And he said to me, I bet you Lennit Max will solve it. Now, Gideon.
So I'm not going to bet whiskey against you because I'm just going to lose.
Gideon, it is good to receive. Yeah, it is good to receive a salary. It's good. You have to live. But the most rewarding thing for me is, and was at that day, is for somebody who put trust in me and I didn't disappoint. I changed the life of an individual. And it was worthwhile to go to office. And when I was police general, I told the guys, when you put on your uniform and you say to your family, you go to work, go with the intention to change the life for the better, for even if it is for one person, because that is what you took the oath for, and that is to serve and protect our people.
General, that is a fantastic note with which to end. Thank you so much for spending nearly 10 minutes extra time with us. We're definitely having you on soon. You're always a hit. And thank you for bringing much needed perspective to what's been going on. I think much needed hope, because there is an element of sanity, an element of control, and an element of rationality out there. And I think you've managed to lay that out for the viewers and myself wonderfully tonight. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Gideon.
And to the viewers, thank you for tuning in to us tonight. The General will be back. He's a firm favorite, and he's definitely coming back. And thank you for everything, well, you guys have done, for the super chats, for just being here, for the likes, for the shares. Please go into DRSA, have your say there. It's very important to all South Africans to be active citizens. And I'll see you soon. Lots of live streams next week. Follow the YouTube, the Facebook, and the Twitter, and we'll be in touch. Have a good evening and stay safe.